Hello and welcome to the Roundtable Podcast. I'm Sir Galahad, aka Shogun. We're going to talk today about the mystery of Oak Island, aka the Curse of Oak Island. Very mysterious and enigmatic mystery. Is somebody's echoing? I guess that's for either Arcturus or Excalibur, but everyone's keeping my closed. So it's basically a very strange mystery treasure pit in Canada, I'm pretty sure, and they've been trying to figure out what it's all about for a long time. People have died. They think there's a big treasure there. It's associated with the Knights Templar. We'll let Hawthorn explain beyond that. We're the Roundtable Discord server. Just Google Roundtable Discord, or find us on politics or conspiracy theories on Discord. Follow us on YouTube and find our podcast there and on the server and elsewhere. And we're on all social media. If I robot or my connection drops, please just say roboting and I'll reset. Carry on without me. That being said, hello Hawthorn, how are you? Welcome to the server.
Thank you. I'm well, and I'm excited to get to know the community with this little presentation tonight.
All right, so feel free to take it away and give us some information about Oak Island, and we'll open it up for general participation after that. But give us the introductory concept.
Yeah, thank you. So Oak Island is a little island, about 20 acres, I think, off of the east coast of Nova Scotia, Canada. And it's a place where there's a treasure hunt that's been going on since 1795. So after 225 years, the fact that something incredibly valuable was hidden there is indisputable, but what it is and who buried it is still an absolute mystery. My personal connection with this goes back to, in my childhood memory, maybe as a 9-year-old, sitting at the lake on a rainy day and reading the Reader's Digest from 1965, where the book section described the story of Oak Island, where this treasure hunt had been going on since 1795. And I read it, and it absolutely fascinated me as a 9-year-old. And here we are 55 years later, and we still don't know who buried the treasure or what it is. Now, my knowledge about what's going on there is cheaply acquired by watching the History Channel, because 7 years ago they started a TV series called The Curse of Oak Island. And since I've been fascinated by it since a kid, I was absolutely hooked on the program from the beginning. And it's made by the same people who make the Ancient Alien TV series. So if you're a fan of that, you recognize the narrator and the style and the endless repetition that takes up about 2/3 of every show and drives me crazy. But for the parts where they actually get digging around in the mud and pulling things out, and metal detecting and radiocarbon dating thing, it's absolutely fascinating. And so that's what I want to introduce you to tonight, because you don't have to watch all 7 years of the show. Most of it is tedious. But there are parts of it that are mesmerizing. And in fact, they completely rewrite the prehistory of North America. So that's something that's worth noting. And I'll also note that in October 2017, they found an artifact that's been radiocarbon dated to a mine in France that closed in 1400. So this is the first piece of physical evidence that validates the Knights Templar premise behind the Oak Island claim. And in fact, at its most sort of fantastic, the Oak Island story, if you follow my train of thought this evening, will have you absolutely believing that the Holy Grail and the Ark of the Covenant, the sacred menorah, are all in the bottom of the pit at Oak. So I'm going to sort of go through it in, yeah, thank you. That's a really helpful illustration there, because So I can go two directions here. I'm inclined to start at the year 1795 and talk a little bit about what's been going on in the search for the treasure. That is, the treasure hunt began then. So I'll go from there up till the present. And then I'm also going to go from there backwards. That is, what is the theory that gives credibility to the notion that it was indeed the Knights Templar who brought the sacred relics following their what was it? Their excommunication on Friday, October the 13th, 1307. So that's the connection between the you see chat and the 2027 discovery. Okay, so 1795. Now, Nova Scotia, Canada. Oak Island is located in Mahone Bay, and actually, my family, through my mother's side, settled in Mahone Bay, Nova Scotia, in Halifax, Nova Scotia, with the Cornwallis expedition, 1750. So I'm a Canadian that goes back. Family lines go back to before Canada. And then Lunenburg is just south of that, and it's a UNESCO World Heritage for its fantastic architecture and also the beautiful archipelago of islands in Mahone Bay. Lunenburg is on Mahone Bay. Oak Island is in Mahone Bay. And Oak Island is named that because it was populated by an exceptional species of oak that is not extant in Nova Scotia. It doesn't exist elsewhere. It was an introduced species. And in 1795, some teenagers in this small town that was just growing on the shores of Mahone Bay noticed some lights on one of the islands, and they went to explore in the rowboat. And where they thought they'd seen the lights, there was a large oak tree, from a large limb of which hung a block and tackle. And at the bottom of the block and tackle, there was a depression, which, when they cleared it away, led them to start digging. And a couple feet down, they found an oak platform. So, being teenagers with nothing to do, they dug out the oak timbers and dug down another 10 feet, where they got to another platform. Now they're 12 feet down. They still got lots of time. I guess it's summer. They dug down another 10 feet, and they found another oak platform. And again at 30, again at 40 feet, and again at 50. So this was what first amazed them, and they realized they were getting in over their heads. So they recruited the adults who formed a company that became the Oslo Company, that began excavation, I think, just after 1800. And as they kept going deeper, they got to 90 feet down, and they reached another oak layer of oak boards. There were also a layer of impermeable blue clay at that level, and a stone tablet which has an inscription that's on that map. See, that I posted to start off the inset on the map. And at the 90-foot level, it's covered with sort of a runic code of some kind, but no one's really authentically deciphered it. And now they've lost the fucking thing, and so you can't actually even have any confidence in it as a bona fide artifact. But that's just one of the many sort of exasperating aspects of almost the clumsiness of the search, and like, how come it's so long and we still don't even know who made this amazing complex production. But once they got, so now you're 90 feet deep, you're well below ocean level on the little island, right? And this is on the site of what, on that little map labeled money. It actually sort of shows the oak tree. shaft going down as the other inside. They got down over 90 feet. That is, they found the stone, and then they pulled the stone out, pulled out the next layer of logs, dug down another few feet, and suddenly the wall of the tunnel collapses and it fills with water all the way up. And they put pumps in and they bailed, and what they realized was that there was an elaborate tunnel that intersected with the shaft that they were digging down that had been engineered in a way that it would slide if it ever got to whatever. And so this led to an even more elaborate series of investment bankruptcies of
Hey, Hawthorn,
engineers.
if I can
Yeah, sorry.
interrupt real quick, if you could just get closer to your mic, I think you're kind of breaking up. I'm not sure if.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Is that a bit better?
It's a bit better.
I'll keep my voice up. There we go. So if you read the history of Oak Island, this search that's gone on since the early 1800s, it's a fascinating story of all the different ways that people tried to dig parallel tunnels and also to block this network of flood tunnels so that the booby trap system could be disabled and they could get down to a depth that would otherwise be very accessible to. Nova Scotia, for example, has a big coal mine industry, and they know how to go way down and build shafts and all sorts of situations. But this one absolutely had the best of them stymied. The booby trapping system comes from what on that little map is called Smuggler's or Smith's Cove. And they have found the source of the seawater that floods the tunnel. Meant that someone had to build these really long lateral tunnels, or like angling down, then intersecting with the shaft, and it has 5 tributary water sources, so that you find one of them. It's incredibly sophisticated, and it was all built in that intersect in the treasure shaft, and then, but again, we still don't know what's below it. 7 years ago, History Channel began a program called The Curse of Oak Island, and it's a fascinating show. I've been watching it over that time, and I'll sort of synopsize for you what I think of are the highlights of the years of work that they've done. The most important thing they've discovered in that time is the Templar cross, the lead cross that they found on when metal detecting on Smith's Cove, 2017. That Templar cross is uniquely important because the lead that it's made from can be traced to a mine in France that closed for. And also its form aesthetically, as shown in one of the posts, is identical to a form that was carved on the stone walls of a castle in Dom, France, D-O-M, France. That's not a likeness that can be simulated, and it's not a chemical. It's sort of a historical fact that can really be disputed. So someone was there before Columbus who lost that cross, and so that would have to do with the people who actually put this incredible, elaborate subterranean earth and waterwork together to protect something special. And also, like the chamber that no one's ever reached is over 140 feet below the island surface. So when you think about the amount of labor that would be required, say, even to bring in all the logs for all those 10-foot platforms, and the clay to create the water impermeable layers, the the manpower is just astonishing to contemplate. And then also there are some anomalies like coconut fiber that's used to create water permeable membranes over box drains that bring the salt water into the shaft. First of all, that has to come from the Caribbean, of course. There's no closest coconut would be. And also that coconut fiber has been definitively radiocarbon dated to I've got it in my notes here. I think it's 1240. Oh yeah, coconut fiber dated 1260 to 1400 AD from the Caribbean. So whoever did it appears to have done it in that time window. And then most recently in this past year they did dendrochronology on some wood pieces they brought up from the treasure vault, and they were definitively dated at 1626 to 1680. So there are these variances in the time window in terms of what was actually deposited. But one, if you're curious about like how incredibly complex this architecture is, you can watch a couple of the episodes that have to do with what they found under the water in Smith's Cove, when they built a huge steel retaining wall around it during the last couple seasons, and excavated stuff that's like 10 feet of ocean mud in Smith's Cove. And what they found include huge wooden wharfs and including a concrete wall, believe it or not, well underneath the water level, as well as these box drains. And but it's so they keep revealing more and more complex structures and more parts of the island, but none of it is coming together into a uniform theory, which I find fascinating. So the current state of the exploration, if you watch, it was season 7 just ended, and they haven't even made an announcement on season 8, but this is just sort of a fascinating transition point in terms of the search that these two brothers, Rick and Marty Lagina, have been undertaking on television for 7 years now, spending many millions of dollars doing it. Basically, so many holes and tunnels have been dug down now into what has become a collapsed cavern that they can no longer proceed using the same model they've been doing, which is driving big 36 or 48-inch cans down and extricating underneath, because the ground below them is all collapsing in on it. And so what they have to decide now is whether they're going to do the big dig and basically create like a massive hole, like an open pit mine, and just go right down there and get whatever the hell is out there out. As all of the efforts at tunneling have basically destabilized the whole site without giving anyone the satisfaction out what the fuck is at the bottom. And even more unsatisfying than that is, like, we don't even know if it was anything from the Egyptians to, Bluebeard to the Maya. It's a complete crapshoot of scope of what's on the table. So that's kind of cool too. But I'm going to just fill you in so that's my kind of meandering wander through 1795. when modern treasure hunt began, and 2020 when season 7 of the History Channel show concluded. I'm going to just kind of turn my head and look the other way. Let's go 1795 back to 1000 AD, and I'll explain the theory of the holy relics may actually be right here on Canadian soil and our next best tourist. But I'm just going to pause and have a sip, and if anybody wants to make a comment or ask a question, go right ahead.
I was just going to say really quick, everything that he was just talking about, I threw it down into the recorded event channel for the text. So just to give you guys an understanding of what he was talking about with the drain tunnels and all that stuff, and Mahone Bay, and yeah.
So I appreciate that. I'm
No problem.
I'm not that savvy.
Oh, I know a lot about this subject too. It's pretty cool.
I've read the Randall Sullivan book. You might have as well.
No, I didn't.
Okay, and it's funny because I lent it to a buddy, so I'm like doing this without the book. That's cool. And there are some.
I do have a copy of the Reader's Digest.
Oh, I'd love to grab that, man. The two brothers, like they literally, Marty and Rick Lagina, who were the ones doing the show, they literally read the same Reader's Digest as kids and fell in love with the story. The theory at the time the Reader's Digest was published was that it was like Bluebeard's treasure or pirate treasure. But okay, let's go back into the past then, and we'll go back to sort of jazz out the theory that the real treasure under Oak Island is actually treasure hidden by the Knights Templar, and then it may actually include the holy artifact. Ready for that? Okay, so we're going back to about 1,000 years, 1095. Pope Urban II orders the First Crusade. This is pretty trippy stuff, even to talk. To recapture Jerusalem from the Muslims. And Christians from across Europe would Jerusalem and successfully slaughter the Muslims and take over the Holy Land. And then the religious fervor of the day being such that people would then go on pilgrimages from Europe to the Holy Land. Led to this problem that they all had to take all their money with them in a little purse, and they were getting whacked before they ever got to Jerusalem. So a knight named Hugh de Payet, in just after 1795, goes to the king of Jerusalem that he established an order of protect the pilgrims from Europe, and king agreed, and so he established a group called the Knights Templar. And the king also gave them quarters on Temple Mount, which to the Muslims is called. So
I think you're both breaking up. Hawthorn, you are breaking up.
Hawthorn, let's both leave the real quick research connections. Okay. Come on back.
Sorry. Let's see. So the Knights Templar have Al-Aqsa Mount, and they establish themselves there as essentially a security force, but they also establish the world's first bank, and they create a system through which pilgrims can deposit their money in Europe. and withdraw it when they get to Jerusalem. Unless, of course, they die, in which case the Knights Templar keep all the money. But the Knights Templar are also doing the protection side. So basically became sort of a military, religious, multinational secret society. And in that sense, and very quickly became wealthy. And successfully, and in the first years that they were on Temple Mount, the first 10 years they were there, they actually spent excavating the Temple Mount. And they were looking for, in fact, the biblical treasures, which were all laid out in the Old Testament in terms of like what they were and what they did. And they knew that the Ark of the Covenant was the ultimate weapon of war as well. The Old Testament describes and Indiana Jones movies describe the Ark of the Covenant as containing the Ten Commandments, but it was a powerful weapon. It wasn't just a religious artifact. It was a weapon of war. Could manifest the power of God in human combat. So that would really interest people who now had custody of the mountain. Apparently, they spent 10 years excavating Temple Mount after they gained custody of it, and then they stopped. So as they accumulated a lot of wealth, they lent a lot of it to the King of France to finance his kingdom, Philip IV. And they also lost control of Jerusalem. And so their essential mission had failed from the church's point of view. And Philip IV to the Pope and asked him to declare the Knights Templar heretics. And the Pope agreed. And so Philip created a plan that was designed with a month's notice and executed, as I mentioned, on Friday the 13th, 1307, which is why we always call Friday the 13th the unlucky day. And on that day, orders were executed throughout France for the arrest of all Knights Templar in all of their strongholds. And so basically, armed forces arrived at all of the castles of the Knights Templar on the agreed upon date, arrested them all, and seized their treasure and their land for the king. They having all been declared heretics and worshippers of Satan. And on that same day, their Grand Master, so the Grand Master of the Knights Templar reports directly to the Pope. So when the Pope decides he's actually an infidel, then it's okay. In fact, it's your duty as a Christian to arrest and torture and kill the Knights Templars. So they arrested, actually, there are only records of them arresting 500 of what were, I've heard, either 4,000 to 5,000 Knights Templars were in service at the time of the edict. And their Grand Master, John de Mallet, was tortured for 7 years, apparently to extract from him their secrets, and then he was burned at the stake in 1314. So the theory that, and also the entire Templar library in Paris was burned, and therefore there are no written records from the times of the Knights Templar, even though they were meticulous record. And again, they had this complex of physical strongholds that they had built, including incredibly complex tunneling works and subterranean works, all through the Middle East, Europe, Spain, England. And And also, let's remember that even though this order was given by Philip IV for their arrest, torture, and execution, they were a military organization in their own right, and they had their own intelligence sources. And the raid that was executed on October the 13th, 1307, was ordered a month earlier. And you'd have to think that, like, they got word, and they would have had provision and their own ways of responding to the. So this is how actually the connection emerges between that event and their treasure needing a place to go to. That is, they had Knights Templar had a fleet of ships in La Rochelle, France. I think it was 17 ships, and the king sent soldiers to secure the ships, and when they got to the port, the fleet had disappeared, and it was never confirmed where it went. But it would make sense that Templars, as a military organization, recognizing that they were going to be on the losing end of this, and they've been on the losing end of a number of battles ever since the defeat in Jerusalem. So they were prepared. They had safe houses. They had contingency plans. They had a fleet in port. What would you put in the fleet? Well, your most valuable stuff. So that would be your most sacred treasures and relics. And so that's what they would have evacuated, either through there, or there's another theory which has them evacuating through Portugal, which is intriguing because the Knights Templar also essentially bought the crown of Portugal, and sailed. Portuguese sailors traveling to Newfoundland and the east coast of Canada, historically wayward. So the Knights Templar from 1307 on had access to European fleets that were known to be frequenting North America long before Christopher Columbus sort of by for a cameo. So the theory would be that the fleet from La Rochelle left, and where would they go? Well, their safe house would be in Scotland, where the Scottish ruler had been excommunicated by the king. Robert the Bruce was Scotland's ruler at the time, and he was already in shit with the Pope. So he would have and did company with Templar evacuees. It was sort of the safe house next door. And this is where there's also a fascinating kind of cross-validation with the indigenous people of Nova Scotia, who are either called the Mi'kmaq when I grew up or the Mi'kmaq now. But they have a legend of a white god lord who came to them as a traveler, and he was a Scots, and as a result there are influences of both Christianity and Scottish culture in Mi'kmaq culture of Nova Scotia that again long predates what we would call white first contact. So there's the idea is essentially that the sacred relics were taken from either France or Portugal to Scotland, where they were sheltered for a time. And then there are stories of a Templar voyage in 1178 to Nova Scotia to either explore or to hide artifacts. That's documented by a historian named Vina Alpern, and it's described in one of the Oak Island episodes. And then there's another narrative about a 1398 voyage from the Orkney Island, north end of Scotland, to Nova Scotia, Canada, and that was the one by Henry Sinclair, who was the patron of Knights Templar in Scotland, and intriguingly was also um, the man who built Roslin Castle, which is a masterpiece of Templar architecture. And he's also the kind of the transition figure who facilitated the morphing of the Templars to become the Freemasons. So there is a very strong line of continuity between the Knights Templar, who apparently hid the treasure, that is, constructed it and deposited their sacred relics there, and the Freemasons, who have been the ones who have been doing the searching for it since 1995. That is, all of the people who have been looking for the treasure have been Freemasons, and all of the evidence, or a lot of the evidence for who hid the treasure, is that it was hidden by the. So it's kind of like they're they have inside knowledge on the value of what it is they're looking for. Close with one last point. Maybe a couple of points. Another fascinating discovery that they made was the bones at a depth of about 130 feet brought up in one of the canisters that they dug. They found 2 fragments of human bone that they were able to radio. Now, I didn't write down the dates of those, but it's on that episode. Basically, Middle Age is one of them European, the other Middle Eastern. So you have to ask yourself, what are the bones of the human turd 130 feet down in a shaft below, 90 feet below sea level in Nova Scotia, Canada, dating from the. It's like there's got to be some crazy stuff going on for that to happen. But that brings me to why I find the Knights Templar theory most compelling. The line of reasoning that this is such a complex work, whoever did whatever it is they did, that you wouldn't have done it to hide a pirate's treasure. No matter how large the treasure's only worth what the treasure's worth. You bury a chest of gold, 10 feet down, but you don't go down 140 feet and double booby trap it, all the lengths that they've gone through. You only do that for something that's of like priceless value. So it may well be made of gold, as the Ark of the Covenant is alleged to be. But it's given the amount of effort and intelligence and discipline required to sustain this kind of architectural work in the quote unquote the New World. There were no sawmills to mill all the wood that they used to make these tunnels. You had to do it yourself. The amount of time that it must have been religious devotion, and that could be facilitated by a bunch of military monk warriors of the Knights Templar in 17, leaving in after 1307 to get out of Europe with what the Knights Templar deemed precious, and a plan to. So that would suggest that when they find it, it would date from sometime between the late 1300s and say the time of Henry Sinclair, about 1400 or before Columbus. That what they would have deposited there would be sacred relics of them. So stay tuned for the next episode, and I hope that's been an interesting scan of some of the data. And I'd be happy to hear. Oh, I'm going to just add one other little bit, which is sort of about the curse aspect, because the show is called The Curse of Oak Island, and they keep saying like 6 people have died the Here are two things that I find really fascinating about the notion that there is actually a supernatural component to it, and there's a lot of it as well. But one of them is the guys who spend his whole life exploring there, a guy named Ted Nolan. He has a house, you can see it on the map, it's right at the top of the swamp. And it's on all the maps, Ted Nolan. Well, in the more than 50 years that Ted lived on the island, he never spent a single. So you think about that, you're an explorer and you got a house and it's an island, you got to take a boat to get off. So, and you don't spend a single night on the island in 50 years? So the second story is actually in the book by Randall Sullivan. And it's about a time when they had a night, they were in the 1800s, they were doing work on the island. And there had been, they had a night watchman who stayed there to make sure nobody buggered with you. And he was a huge, tough guy who nobody would mess with. And one night he came home to his family on the mainland and rowed himself across in the night. And he said he could speak to his wife that a fiery-eyed werewolf pinned him to his bed and hissed the message off and never come back. And this huge man who knew no fear jumped in his rowboat, rowed like hell shore, never went back to the island. And his wife said, he showed me his arm and he had bruises on both of his arms where the thing had held him down. So those are my two best stories about kind of supernatural aspect of the curse of Oak Island. But if we are talking about people who know about things like the Ark of the Covenant power, who knows what tricks they had up their sleeves before they. So thanks for your attention, and I hope you've enjoyed it.
Thanks very much. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Ooh, you got static there, Galahad. I was just going to say, who was the brother that was, or not brother, but he was a resident there. He was found running around nude on the beach, completely disorientated. And
I don't know that story, but one of the guys who's on the show now tells the story about he was overcome by the spirit of a priest whose throat was being slit. And he ended up like falling to the floor. Like this is, that's Dan Hensky, who's on the show now. He's one of the old timers now. But he was, he came, as he put it, like demon possessed.
Yeah, and he was found naked running around on the beach.
Yeah, that could be. I didn't remember that part of it, but that's flat out. It's on video in the program. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's an aspect of the program that I respect is there's an authenticity to those sort of like salt of the earth people who've been like digging around in the muck there forever. They just want to find out like what the hell, who did this?
Well, they also found Roman bolts, right? Like crossbows. It's a Roman bolt.
Yep.
Like some of the other artifacts too that they have found, like they found the red ruby gem there was a cheap piece of glass, but the actual technique of doing the gold embroidered twist. So the way that was twisted, they only did that like 1400 years ago. They were doing that twisting gold like that.
Absolutely. And the wood that they brought up from like deep down, you can see. So you think about making tunnel shaft on, like you can't go to the local store to buy your lumber, right? So you got to cut all the trees down. You've got to take your axe and hand hew them into the dimensions for construction, and then you've got to have your carpenters take them down this tunnel, and you're building a shaft that's going down 140 feet to a chamber that seems to have a concrete roof. The It's this incredible, and then you think about, okay, now you got to sustain all of the workers in the community in Oak Island, Canada. Like, they got to eat, right? They got to have places to live. There's got to be quite a few people living on there. And then, why is this one island the one that everybody says like that's got all this attention? Not just in the last couple of 100 years, but going back into prehistoric.
Absolutely. Plus the bone fragments too. They got bone fragments, and they figured the bone fragments come from a guy from the Middle East.
Yeah.
So they must have had a slave population or something like that there to even do that type of work.
Another theory is that they cooperated with the Mi'kmaq. The Mi'kmaq tribe's flag is exactly the same as the Sinclair flag from Scotland. So, and one theory is that Henry Sinclair hired local labor and collaborated with the First Nations people to build the structures that they engineered. And that's why they always got along. That's a happy story. They could have also been slaves, and they buried them all at the bottom.
Yeah, there's a lot of history out there.
They found a lot of tunneling tools as well for building underground tunnels. And an interesting project they did this past year was there's a swamp in the middle that you can see on the map there. And they drained the swamp. And what they discovered there was a huge stone, like a patio, they call it, or like a platform that's buried in the muck. And that theory involves the awareness that this was actually two islands, and the swamp was created in order to hide something, sunken ship, or maybe it was a landing platform that they then flooded. Just like in Smith's Coves, where they had these wharfs that they flooded, basically buried in the muck.
Prehistoric dry dock.
Exactly. And then, well, what were you loading or what were you unloading? And maybe they built a berm, keep it dry, do all the work, and then they flooded it afterwards so nobody could even see where the entrance is to the.
See, that's speculation too. Like, the best way, they figure there's another way to get down there without being flooded, but they don't understand.
That's right. Yeah, they're looking for the. I mean, if you look at Smith's Cove on the top right of them, we know the flood tunnels come in from there to the money pit. They actually found them this year and intersected. And then it seems like they may also come from the swamp, or maybe the swamp was the back door from which treasure was deposited. And then the protection was all from the ocean side, and then they kind of flooded the entrance afterward.
Yeah, and they've also pulled weird planks out of that swamp too.
Yeah, and metal as well. That seems to suggest that a ship was burned in the swamp, like the burnt end of spars, some spikes that come from the deck of a ship and some pieces of metal from a ship are found in the swamp. Well, that has to be related to what was going on.
What I found real interesting was when they started really digging up Smith's Cove. Like, I was like, are you serious? You're finding all that underneath there? Like, that's not even like a prehistoric dock. That's like,
Yeah,
literally a retaining wall or something like that. And then to find concrete wall under all that, like the same depth, and they got pipes coming out of it.
that one blew me away for sure. And it's never been explained. Like that's just a WTF kind of moment, right? Like, and it still just sits there. I mean, the Romans knew how to make concrete, but why would somebody be pouring concrete like they were like 8 or 10 feet below sea level, weren't they at that point? They're like way out on that retaining wall in Smith's Cove.
I'd say at least 6+ feet. And it was weird too because it was formed concrete. Somebody literally had forms to make those 90-degree forms of concrete. Like, it's crazy.
And also they did dendrochronology on a piece of wood that they cut from at the end of the wharf in Smith's Cove, right underwater. And you might help me with the date there, but I think it came back about, was it 1740 or something like that?
Yeah, we've had a lot of dates that go back. Well, especially with that lead cross too. Like some of the dates go back almost 2,000